Hello everybody and welcome back to Cosmic Owl Astrology with Louise Edington. I am the Cosmic Owl and I've realised I've taken my background off, so whatever for now. And I also realise I may not have finished posting the written version of the current week's report. I'm recording this on the 23rd. I've just come out of 2 very intense days of my first Ceres Reborn workshop. It was absolutely amazing. So I'm in recovery from that. But I'm also going away on Wednesday for a few days with my husband, Wednesday through Sunday. So I'm trying to get ahead, but I'll go back and check if I did the written report. What a time. And believe me, getting that Ceres Reborn workshop ready with the Mercury station in Pisces was interesting, but as I knew it would, it worked out. But I may have missed a couple of other bits, so I'll go back and check all those. But anyway, what a time we're in. Luckily, the week ahead, beginning the 29th, this is the week ahead forecast, so it's going to begin on March the 29th. Again, I'm recording this on the 23rd, so I may have missed some world events by the time that week starts, but I can tell you that things are starting to change rapidly. And some of it's, well, already we've got ice going in airports in the US, but people are filming them and photographing them and hounding them, and these ice agents are all trying to hide their faces, and the citizens who have their phones out and taking pictures and videos are asking their names or badge numbers, and they won't give them. So things are heating up in that respect. But I also think people are kind of saying, we don't like this, we've had enough. So we'll see how that develops, right? But anyway, the week ahead, beginning the 29th. As usual, I've pulled 2 cards. And here we have death, which is also rebirth, so don't go, ooh, death. Seeker of bees, 9 of vessels. I'm loving that one. And also the dreamer from the Witch Oracle deck. As usual, I will go through the day by day, and then I will go through each of those cards at the end. And this might be a little bit shorter than some of my week ahead forecasts, because we don't have a lot of very major aspects. We do have the full moon, but I'll do a separate full moon video for that. But let's start the week. So we start the week on March the 29th, Sunday, March the 29th, with the moon in Leo, heading out of it. And so we'll talk quickly about the major lunar aspects, but also just kind of to help you generally tune in to where we're at. By the start of the week, beginning the 29th, Mercury will have moved from its station point to 8 degrees Pisces over Vesta and to 11 degrees, and is moving fast. No, it's still moving slow, but Mercury will gain speed fast. So we've got those things coming up. We still have Chiron and Eris moving together, and I meant to add a couple of extra points, so let me add them in, because Okiroe, I think the divine child of Chiron and his wife Chariclo, the prophetess seer kind of energy, is moving on. So let me add those. Yeah, I should have been more prepared maybe, but I've also got to upload tax documents to have a tax appointment when we get back from our trip. Honestly, things are crazy in my life right now. So let me just find Okiroe. And a couple of centaurs that I like to use, because they really are shouting loudly right now. And this is how I work. It's like, what's really like kind of playing its part right now. Okay, I've just got to find Caraclo, and then we'll move on. But anyway, so here in Aries, for a little while there, we had Eris, Chiron, and Okiroi all at 24 degrees, then 25 degrees. Okiroi is by far the faster moving energy of these. She's starting to move on. Venus has also crossed over all this energy in Aries and is moving on and will move into Taurus. We'll talk about that. By the start of next week, you can see the sun. The Aries sun in Aries season has already moved to 8 degrees. The Aries energy is starting to pile up, and other energies are starting to move towards Aries as well. I think that's all I want to mention to start the week. All right, so let's go quickly through the lunar aspects first of all. So before the moon leaves Leo, the moon will make a lovely fire trine to asteroid Lilith. Talk to the hand. No, we're not doing this anymore. In Aries, really taking a stand, standing up for yourself, and being very clear on what you want. And then the moon will oppose Caraclo, who is also being left behind by these aspect-wise. In 2028, Caraclo and Chiron will begin an extensive 60-degree sextile aspect, which I will do a whole video on. But for now, they got very close and they're going to start moving apart. But she is that spinner of grace who's been holding space, the cosmic doula for rebirthing. And so the moon takes a good look at that and goes, how are we doing? How are we doing from stepping into our heart and creating from love in so many ways, and grace? But, also the moon will then make a fire trine to Eris and then Chiron. And that's how we are shaking things up and taking a stand. There's a lot of activist energy. I always think asteroid Lilith has got that kind of rebellious activist kind of energy. So has Eris, and so has Pallas Athena. So we'll come back to that in a minute. And then, of course, the moon will trine Okiroi, so we get a glimpse of what's coming. And I think things are starting to change so fast. Now, I watch my friend Dabney Lawless's videos as much as I can. And this morning, I happened to watch her latest one with Nick Dagan-Best, the human ephemeris. And I advise you go and watch it, because he kind of confirms what Kathy and I were saying about a certain leader of this country. He has long said, apparently, I hadn't heard it before, but that's because I hadn't watched all of his videos. So he has said it before, I believe, that person will be gone either in late March or in April. So anyway, you've got that to look forward to. And I think that activist energy coming up is saying, no, we don't like this. I don't know how it's going to happen, but, whatever. Okay, so then as well, the moon will sextile. We'll get to the end of Leo and we'll make an aspect of opportunity, a sextile to Hygeia, our preventative health and holistic health asteroid. And then we'll square Uranus at that same degree as well. So that's more radical shake-up energy. But it's also that we're starting to see what we need to do to reverse or halt this craziness that we're in, and to bring the change, because change is coming. I'll go back to the moon in Virgo later, because I want to talk about what else is happening. Oh, Zoom is just messing around. Okay. I don't know what's happening here. It doesn't matter. I don't need a speaker. I don't need to listen to myself. I'm going to listen to this quickly before I upload it. But anyway, Mars still in Pisces. Remember, Mars doesn't love being in Pisces or any water sign particularly. It's kind of more spiritual warrior, but it can also be more, you know, revealing, and also kind of like this passive kind of aggression, this confusing aggression. But Mars reaches Pallas Athena on the 29th, right at the start of the day. That's really early in the morning. You can see they're almost there at the degree I've set it at. And Pallas Athena is also, she's the goddess of wise justice. She has an activist energy. She is why I had my feminist tattoo, not as a Venus symbol here. I had it with the Pallas Athena symbol, because I have definitely that advocate, activist energy in so many ways. And she is ignited by this Mars. She is driven as well to push for justice. These goddess energies are really speaking loudly, which is why I think they're important. Okay, and by that I don't mean just women, of course, but it is women too. Black Moon Lilith over here again is back into Sagittarius, and she opposes Sedna again. I'm not going to go into great detail, but she's that part of us that has been shamed, and now she is saying no more, not doing all that. We're letting go of where we've been shamed and taking and standing up for our raw elemental self energy that has been sidelined or kept down for so long. Okay. All right. So as well, then Juno moves into Aquarius, leaving only Pholus here in Capricorn. Juno is the marriage asteroid, but she's our sacred contracts asteroid with each other. She represents all kinds of contracts, from the bigger kind of energy contracts to actual contracts, or like those soul contracts we feel like we've made or we have made, whatever you believe about those things. She's moving into Aquarius, joining that into that sign of humanitarianism, but the future, hopes and wishes for the future as well, more the sign of the people. So, she is going to join that kind of more activist, revolutionary kind of vibe as well, after her journey through Capricorn, where she has seen how our sacred contracts are not being met, and how the man-made structures that we live under are not supporting that. So this is the general trajectory of everything. And then Neptune over here. Neptune, Black Moon Lilith comes up to trine Neptune, another fire trine. We've got more fire again now with all this Aries energy. Fire likes change and visionary energy and action. So people are starting to take action. This is incidentally the day after the No Kings March, of course. The next No Kings in the USA. And I will be traveling, so unfortunately I can't go, but good luck with everybody that goes, and stay safe. And so, one more thing before the moon moves into Virgo. Mars has passed Pallas Athena, but now reaches Centaur Nessus. The buck stops here. We're seeing this toxicity, the abuses of power, all in all ways, everywhere. not just the apparent leader in the USA. We're seeing it everywhere. So without going into too much detail, Mars is another one saying, cut it out. We are going to take action to stop this. Again, it can also bring some kind of aggression and violent reactions, but I don't like to focus on that, because I am convinced that how we talk about astrology kind of helps to bring things in a little bit, to a degree. Okay, so I'm moving this so still on Sunday. Here you go. The moon moves into Virgo and again crosses Regulus that moved into Virgo at the end of 2011. The nodes are going to start moving towards that Regulus soon. So, but the Virgo moon, so we start the week with that moon in Leo, that ebullient kind of heart-led moon that is like a big red balloon, I always think. But now we get the moon in more serious, humble, service-oriented Virgo for a couple of days. And, you know, it's time to kind of get to work. So, you know, we'll be at the end of Sunday here in the US, we'll feel like we've got to get that filing done. My tax documents uploaded and really focus on that now. The workshop and my short trip away is done. So then the moon will square Sedna. So, you know, that happens every month. So I'm not going to go into that too much. But then we'll sextile Haumea, who is also not on there. Oh, good Lord. Sorry. Mercury's, you know, still playing silly devils with me. But here at the moon, of course, sextiles Haumea, supportive aspect, not and Haumea is, you know, involved in all these big energies building up in the early degrees of signs that will increase throughout the year when Uranus goes into Gemini, reaching a peak around July. It's kind of ongoing so much. But anyway, March the 3rd, and she's one of the big changes. So we're starting to feel the big shifts coming in. We're really starting to feel it. Okay, so on to the 30th. Let me just start at the beginning of the day. So Monday the 30th. Oh, come on, thank you. Here you can see moon in Virgo. The moon makes a lovely Earth trine, to Ceres. You can see Venus is now at the anaretic degree of Eris. She's going to move into her home sign soon. But the moon, this is getting really in touch with your inner mother, but also in the healing we need to do as we bring the divine feminine back in all its ways and move to a more matrifocal kind of energy. The series, you know, that workshop was off the charts. She really is important now. I will run it again, but you know, she's so important. I just want to emphasize that. And she is a planet. And so then the moon reaches the nodes. Okay, and the nodes are still at 8 degrees. They're still at that 8-degree mark where they were right through the eclipses. And sorry, I had to not answer that call. That was weird. It doesn't normally ring. It rang in my ears. Maybe you didn't hear it. Anyway, and so the moon hits the nodes. So, you know, we're still activating that eclipse degree. So where were we? February the 17th, March the 3rd, that whole period. The activations continue. And how are we moving into this practical mystic energy, if you like, or kind of finding meaning in the collapse? So, you know, there's many ways to look at this. And then the moon will oppose Vesta immediately afterwards, which is our inner flame, also the heart of the state, but let's just say it's the inner flame. And I'm then actually just going to go off the moon and we're going to go. Venus moves into Taurus. She's not in there for that long because she's moving really fast now. You know, it's about her retrograde begins at the end of September, when my class for the Venus class will do. And so, you know, we're a bit away from the end of September, obviously. So about 6 months. So she is moving really fast, you know. So she's whizzing through all the signs right now. But this is in one of her home signs. But I also see it as Ceres' home sign, and this is kind of the Demeter Persephone energy heading towards another reunification. I always think of it in shamanic terms of kind of like the triple moon goddesses, or the maiden mother crone kind of energies, with Pluto being the crone, incidentally. And look at what Ceres and Pluto are doing. So, you know, these are all kind of coming together. Venus, Pluto, and Ceres all met at 0 Aquarius at the end of 2024. And so these aspects are activating that reunification again. It's happening, you know, and I see it happening more and more. Try and, you know, I'm not saying ignore everything that's happening out in the world. You know, it's good to pay attention, but also look for the underlying, what's emerging underneath all this kind of craziness and chaos. And then, for example, like, you know, like all of the NATO allies saying no to helping with this attack on Iran. And they're saying it's not our war. You started it. You know, if you had been attacked, that's when NATO kicks in. But, you know, things like that. People are starting to turn, if you like. Anyway, Pallas Athena, the activist, advocate, hits Nessus. You know, the Epstein files is not going away. We're starting to see the web of connections between all these autocrats and power over dominator, patriarchal culture kind of thing in all its forms. And we're starting to fight back at last. Some of us have been preaching that choir for some time, but, you know, things come in their own time. Anyway, the Virgo moon over here will then come up and oppose Mercury, which is the guide for Virgo. We kind of really... oh, what is going on with my... You know, I'm taking these out. I don't think I need to hear anything. You can hear me. Something's going... Tech issues are still weird. Okay, so long as you can hear me, that's all that matters. So, yeah, so that's kind of looking at some of the things we've reviewed and reflected on during this last Mercury retrograde, or things that have come up, you know, for us collectively. Mercury is revealing things in Pisces, and Virgo is kind of making sense of it. Okay, but it's kind of more of how it feels inside, because it's the moon. It's more about how we feel about things, in my opinion. So anyway, so there's Mercury opposing. Oh, this is driving me nuts. My default speaker keeps changing, but that's what's coming out of my computer, so I don't really need that. So apologies for my distraction with that, but tech issues are still happening for sure. So anyway, then the moon will make a Earth trine to Pholus. Remember, Pholus is kind of like the Pandora's box. The lids come off. We cannot unsee it anymore. People out of integrity, people breaking the rules, Capricorn, and so on and so forth. And it may, you know, apply to some of us as well. I think it's always, you know, a good thing to kind of have a little look back and think, well, I didn't know better then, but that wasn't great. You know, I can do differently now. Okay. No shaming and all that kind of stuff. We're leaving that behind. Then Black Moon Lilith gets aspected by both the Sun and Vesta. And so, you know, this is us shining a big old light on a more where we've been shamed energy, and where we're refusing to do that anymore, and stepping into our inner flame and knowing. All right. And the moon will then come up and make a supportive aspect to Jupiter. There's really some quite big emotions going around with this, because we've still got all this in Pisces, Jupiter in water sign Cancer, and Virgo. That poor Virgo moon is trying to bring it into the body and try and say, let's make sense of it. And how does this feel? And what are we going to do about it? How are we going to meaning make of it? So then Venus kicks in the energy again. Venus will square off to Juno. This is the first aspect of Juno. So Venus and Juno, I always kind of think of Juno as Venus flowered or crown. Venus crowned queen again, if you like Persephone. Anyway, that's how I vision some of these things at times. Well, this is squaring off in fixed signs. This is how we are going to make things real based on our values for the future. They are working together at this point. And the last aspect on the 30th is that Mercury will also aspect Pholus, and so that the moon and Mercury are really doing that together. But if you notice, Pholus has just moved to 13 degrees. We know what number that is, right? Number of the goddess, number of the witch. And Mercury is going over its steps of its retrograde and is saying, okay, we've seen all this. How are we going to change it? There's going to be dialogue happening, more talk about how we're going to change this as well, and more information coming through. All right, so on to the 31st. Last day of March already. Honestly, it's just like nuts how fast time is going, especially when you're busy. March 31st. Okay. Not very many aspects in this day, but you can see here the moon is still in Virgo all day. And the moon comes up and will oppose Nessus, toxins, buck stops here, had enough. Building on all of this. And then the moon will oppose Pallas Athena, going, all right, we see it, it's all been revealed, we've got to take action. How do we do this? And in a meaningful and useful way. Then the moon will oppose Mars, how we are taking action to be the change we want to see. And then the moon will trine Uranus in Taurus, so radical awakenings again, but also the revolutionary vibe is just building. But it's building in a different way than I've ever really felt it before. It's more fighting for, and it's kind of more strategic, which is kind of very Virgo. I think of people like James Tallarico in Texas. If you don't know him, if you're in not in the US, he won a primary and is waiting for he's running for a seat in Texas, but he is a devout Christian, but he is not part of the Christo-fascist right? And he is talking about the real message of Jesus. Now, whilst I'm not a fan of integrating religion at all with politics, I think it's probably a needed message in somewhere like Texas, particularly in these times when we have a person in charge who is basically saying, do this for Jesus. He told his Congress members, the Republican, the MAGA ones, to do this for Jesus. We need the true message of the Christ energy talked about by somebody. So I'll take it. And it's going down really well, to be honest. So, I always think the Christ consciousness is that very Piscean energy, so he's reflecting that. All right, so on the 31st as well, Hecate and Black Moon Lilith aspect each other. Hecate has been a bit quiet, but here she is in Aquarius, moving towards the future, shining her torch. Here's my Hecate. And she speaks to Black Moon Lilith, saying, let's kind of, bring this fire and air in, and letting go, releasing that those beliefs that we were shameful, our actions were shameful, but let's kind of then leave that behind and burn it off and start to take action. I'm going to have to let my cat out in a minute, but I'm just going to finish this day. The moon then squares off to Hygeia and then moves into Libra at 10:50 p.m. on this day. So let me just pause and I'll let her out. I don't think I paused the recording. My sorry. I think I just stopped the screen share. Oh, goodness. I haven't got time to edit it either, so, or start again. But anyway, moon. Told you, tech things still happening. Moon in Libra now for all of April Fool's Day. So now we have Libra, which is coming up to oppose all this Aries energy. Libra likes balance and harmony and justice and but also beauty and things like that. So, I always think the Libra moon for a couple of days is really seeking more of that balance. Doesn't always find it, but is seeking it. But the moon starts with a wonderful kind of air grand trine to Sedna, which is do or die. It's time to, get into your survival instincts and do what you need to do to survive. That's what Sedna really says. That was her story. And she is making this air grand trine to Juno as well. Our contracts. So, this air grand trine is really kind of swirling around. But really, I'm going to say it makes a kite to Neptune. And so, Neptune, that kind of stepping into that higher love energy of starting by loving yourself and then loving thy neighbor. I seem to be talking religion, but I'm not. I'm talking about the words of the religion because I'm not religious at all. But as somebody said about, 2 basic lessons of, the real message of Jesus, and love thy neighbor as thyself. And I was like, oh, most of us have forgotten as thyself bit first, which is me talking about that going within, loving yourself, self-care, accepting all parts of you, working within to be the best that you can with what who you are, but starts with loving yourself and then healing from the inside out, right? That's, to me, what this is. Your first contract is to yourself, okay? And then you can work to let that ripple out. And then the moon will come up and oppose Saturn and trine Pluto, who are, not having their exact aspect yet. They had that a few days ago, actually. Did I miss that one? Anyway, but this is, this is feeling this big conflagration coming in the summer. And Neptune tends to dissolve and Pluto transforms. Pluto literally is death and transformation. And, I picked the death card. And this is how are we dissolving and transforming both ourselves from the inside out and thereby the world. Lots of things we could say about that too, but, going on long enough as well. Then we have the full moon on April the 1st. I'll give you a quick look at it, but just to say that, of course, all these other aspects I'm talking to on the 12th are really kind of part of the full moon. And the full moon is a Libra full moon opposing Aries. It's the moons have moved from 13 degrees back to 12 degrees. The eclipse was at the 12 degree, but this has quite a powerful grand cross here, which I will look at in full. And this is a cardinal grand cross. And grand crosses are challenging because you've got all the four elements all speaking to each other. But how you work with a grand cross is integration, really. Okay, so it's integrating, you could say, with the I am energy, with that inner emotional family kind of energy, with balance and harmony and the structures that we live under. But it's cardinal, it's starting something new. So this full moon is going to give a really good look at where we're at this big crossroads. And then at the same time, the moon comes up and trines Hecate. So my crossroads goddess. So this is a crossroads, and she is kind of the outlet for this, saying, here's the way forward. Here's the strategies. Here's the pieces. Here's the plan in Aquarius for the people. And then the moon squares off to Pholus. And, we have another kind of look at that big old light shining on the lack of integrity, the Pandora's box kind of energy. All right, so now let's move on to April the 2nd. I'll just get that time back to the beginning of the day. And you can see the moon is still in Libra, always just over 2 days in each sign. We're on to Thursday already. And asteroid Lilith comes up and sextiles Chariclo before she conjuncts all of this energy. So it's that she is really, the original divine feminine who was born saying, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to submit to you. I'm not going to submit to the masculine, in the myth, that is, of the Lilith and Adam story. And she's doing that now. She's saying, no, we are created at the same time and equal. We are all human. Neither is one over the other. And she's saying, no, I'm not going to have this anymore. And Chariclo, that space holder, that cosmic doula, is holding space for her to weave that new story and birth this new story and new myths. I think we need new myths to live by, all these things. And then the moon in a Libra will come up and square Jupiter, really kind of activating that grand cross that I talked about. And this really, to my mind, is really helping us to find a way to bring justice and balance back in and harmony. Okay, so on April the 2nd as well, asteroid Lilith then hits Eris, and two activist energies together, the table turner and the no, we're not doing this anymore, teaming up together, to turn more tables, but it's in Aries. This is about individual action. Okay, so. And meanwhile, Venus has been pretty quiet at first in Taurus, but she comes up to oppose Haumea, but she will then square Pluto. And this is making another T-square fixed. Remember, I mentioned it with Juno, who will join this party as well. Ceres, Venus is catching up to Ceres. And so, they're both kind of maiden mother energy. Haumea is regeneration and rebirth. This is in fixed signs. This is about how are we going to bring this into reality, really, this change that we're going through and this regeneration. And believe me, I think we're going to. But we're getting kind of more, I think everything has been telling me that we're going to do it in such a way we've never known before. We as humans collectively, not just women. Women too. And so then the sun over here in Aries squares off to Pholus, shining more light on that Pandora's box energy. And, it continues to do so because, at an individual and a collective level, there's so much been out of integrity, we could say, or things. And Pholus won't go away, although there is a theory that some of these centaurs have been bridge walkers that have come into our consciousness and will leave it again till they're needed. Now, that's a whole big story, but some of these centaurs have wildly erratic orbits and will be so far away from us again at some point that their impact will be less. Okay, so then the moon. No, the moon doesn't do that. Yeah, then the moon comes up and opposes all of this as well, right? So, she's saying the moon in Libra seeking justice. I wouldn't be surprised if more survivors of abuse speak out, or, there's more things around that coming up, but at all its levels, and wanting to restore harmony and balance, but through accountability and justice. Not necessarily a punishment paradigm. I would like to move away from that, but we'll see. Maybe not right away. On to Friday, Venus Day. The moon still in Libra at the start of the day, then opposes Chiron and his daughter Okiroe. We're really starting to see what we need to do to heal the patriarchy, or to dismantle the patriarchy, which has harmed men as much as women, and see the way forward. It's almost like we've got to collapse it before we can rebuild, but we're seeing this more and more. Then the moon, while still in Libra, will make a lovely trine to Hygeia at the anaretic degree. So again, looking at what ideas for recreation and bringing wholeness and holistic kind of energy back in, but also how do we prevent this coming again as we move into this new paradigm. But then Mercury over here reaches that 15-degree mark again and trines Jupiter again. So I'm going to take a moment here to show you, because this is a big water trine. So Mercury trined Jupiter for the first time in on February the 16th. So right before the first eclipse, right? So, and then the Jupiter was retrograde then in Cancer, and Mercury was direct. Sorry. Had not gone retrograde yet. And I've mentioned before, I always see the 15-degree mark as a pivot turning point too. But then Mercury went retrograde and trined Jupiter again on March the 9th, while Jupiter was at Jupiter's station point. This is tidal shift, y'all. But it's something that's being revisited from those first two trines. And so now, on April the 3rd, Mercury trines Jupiter again. Jupiter is moving forward, is about to leave the degree it's stationed direct at. Mercury's starting to gain speed, but is still moving slowly. It's still retracing its steps from the retrograde. But this is a tidal shift in perceptions and thoughts. I don't know if everybody's seen the video going around. And sorry for none in the US. I've only seen snippets of the news for a week. So, but there's a woman who got interviewed at a gas station who had voted for the current resident of the Oval Office 3 times, and she was asked what she thought of him right now, and she was not pleasant about it, shall we say. And when she was asked about how, if she had voted for him, and she said yes 3 times, she kind of looked at the camera and said, well, geez, I guess I'm just a effing idiot. And so there's more of that kind of thing happening. People are starting to change their perceptions. I knew it would come, and it's happening faster and faster. She's just one example. It's happening, but it's happening globally. about what's happening with this kind of power over paradigm, trying to really clamp down on its power and greed and all the things of the hierarchical system that we've lived under. But people are starting to go, oh, no, we don't like this. So that was a long way to talk about that. Mercury trine Jupiter. But then right after that, on Friday, Venus Day, the moon leaves Libra and then will enter the deep waters of Scorpio for a couple of days. And remember, the moon is waning from a full moon now. So, we're, but it's still really under the full moon energy on April the 3rd. So the moon moves into Scorpio at 8:10 a.m. Eastern, and really we have a couple of other aspects. So the Scorpio moon will square Juno, so we'll activate that, and of course will then oppose Venus. So this fixed T square again, conjunct Haumea, making things manifest, kind of like this, let's make this real, kind of activating that feeling again. And then at the end of the day, the moon will oppose Ceres. So, all these energies, these lovely feminine energies, are really doing the work. And I'm going to say Pluto is feminine energy too. It's kind of like soul's desires. It's very deep feeling. It's got a heart on it, for heaven's sake, Pluto, and it rules the underworld, which is our real sacral chakra kind of energy. But also, while all this is happening, asteroid Lilith reaches Chiron and says, again, no, not doing this anymore. We've seen the wound. Now we're going to take action for the healing. And so then Venus squares off to Pluto, that whole T square again that I've talked about. So on to the last day. So we start with the moon in Scorpio. Just look how concentrated all of this is now. Wow. It's just wild, all of this energy. But, and has been for a while, but just feels even more concentrated right now, as things are starting to leave Aquarius and then leave Pisces. Look at this Aries energy. Whoa. It's going to get more. Even though Venus left, it's going to get more. So anyway, and then the Scorpio moon aspects the nodes still at 8 degrees. Oh my God. Come on, it's time to look at the shadow and really transform, that Scorpio moon is saying, based on what we've learned, how our perceptions are changing. But the moon also trines Vesta, our inner flame, and telling us that this is where the answer is, deep within each of us. And this is where the healing is. Again, keep saying it. And then the moon squares off to Hecate, that lovely 13 degrees, and she's still shining her big old light on the path forward, saying, here's the options. Take one or take a couple. Some people can take a couple of paths. Anyway. And then the Scorpio watery moon will make a really powerful water grand trine again to Mercury and Jupiter, pushing that tidal wave shift that I talked about with the Mercury Jupiter exact trine. Jupiter's now moved off its station degree. It's a tidal, I think we're going to get a tidal wave, literally, of changing perceptions because of what's happening in the world. And I guess we had to see it to change. And that's it, I think. It is. That's it for the aspects. So I'll stop share properly this time, and if I get time, I might try and cut that bit out of the video, but I don't really have time. So let's go to the cards. But in summary, we really are now reaching these end of cycles. April is going to be a little bit intense with all that Aries energy for sure. But after April, we really start to approach these shifting times and the change that's coming. We'll see if Nick Dagan Best was right. But, whilst Kathy and I were reluctant to give an exact prediction, we did show that the aspects for the apparent resident of the Oval Office were terrible right now. It's not looking good, shall we say, for him. And so, let's see. Nick Dagan Best, by the way, is a really good mundane astrologer. And, he says, yeah, I can be wrong, but, I've been right as well. And he's been predicting this one for a long time. He did add to it all that he said that there's going to be a power battle after that leader goes. So let's see, shall we? So how appropriate that I pick card number 13, death. But this is transition, okay? So I want to read you the quote with this card. Blessed is he who, after beholding this, enters upon the way beneath the earth. He knows the end of life and its beginning. So, why is it always he? But anyway, blessed are they. They know the end of life and its beginning. Because this is 13. This is Pluto's Scorpio card. This is the divine feminine. The feminine has always been more about the cycles of life and death and reunification and all these things. But anyway, the transformation is coming. And this says, soon we will feel the blood in our veins and know that we are alive and have a journey to complete. We kind of were, in our own death and rebirth, as well as the collective out there. Just saying. So now we get the seeker of bees, which is the hierarchy. Okay. The female worker bees work hard, communicate well, and fly around being busy and very proactive. They keep the hive clean and tidy and ensure the food storage is in good supply. In the Eleusinian Mysteries, this is what this deck is based upon, which is Venus, Ceres, and Pluto. So there you go, in my opinion. But these were the musicians. They used their breath to play sacred wind flutes around the beehives. Bees are very partial to singing and music. The Hyraeoles, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, gave musical performances in many parts of the reunification rituals of the ceremonies at Eleusis. So, here is a young woman, apt, ardent, studious, and willing to learn from all that life can offer her. Some feel there is too much talk emanating from this young seeker. It may be annoying when others desire peace and quiet, but we must honor and appreciate this abundant curiosity for life that this seeker devours so eagerly. Like the bees, she is always busy communicating, flying around, and meeting up with as many beings as she can. This is not an introvert and can always be seen reading, writing, and playing her flute. Sometimes it seems all at once. Some may call her flighty, but this seeker is a pleasure with a presence that is quite infectious and will leave us feeling more alive. Seek her out, for she may want to play music for you or discuss ideas and information on where to go and what to see. But this is I am enlivened. I'm starting to feel really enlivened now. The energy is starting to shift. I don't know about you, but I'm seeing it again amongst other people too. And then this is I am thankful. This is gratitude. This is the 9 of Cups event things. But the quote is so fitting for the energy of the week. When you do things from your soul, you feel the river moving in you. or a river. A joy that's roomy. So it's going within and being grateful really for all that is and the abundance you have, but being grateful for yourself first of all. I'm just saying. You know, most people don't love themselves. More and more people are learning to, though, and realizing that being told it was not okay to love yourself fully, deeply, because, you know, that was somehow like, you know, arrogant or vain. Deep love for the self is deep acceptance, soul acceptance, but also trying to be the best you can. But anyway, last card. Here she is, the soul, carrying you through the unveiled dream sky. When you sleep, the soul awakens and wraps you in her star-filled arms. This is a time for you to glimpse the heavens of your own psyche and sail the Milky Way of possibility. See the card? Receiving a dream is like getting a letter in the mail from your beloved dream mother. She has been with you during your waking hours, witnessing your struggles and triumphs, hopes and fears, and now that your mind is quiet and your soul is alert, she writes her love letter to guide you through all you've been dealing with right now, delivering symbols and signs to help you to process your potential, untangle your doubts and fears, and align with your highest possibility. A witch knows her dreams are a vital part of empowerment and records them, deciphering to the best of her ability the letters from home as a means of charting her daytime path. Right now is the perfect time to write down your dreams. I'm going to say waking dreams as well as sleeping dreams. Pay attention. Create a personal lexicon of symbolism that's coming your way. The meaning of those symbols that repeat is not to be found in any dream dictionary, but in your own unique associations and definitions. Pay attention. The soul is pouring stardust and stories into your being this week. Pay attention. All right, my loves. In summary, it's a much better week, but we're not out of the chaos yet. But it's really moving forward, and people are starting to change their perceptions and to take action.